is nothing new. This is not news. I believe that the actual cause behind
Donald Trump has instructed the Pentagon to resume testing without specifying any particular details. All right, in other news, the Trump administration has issued new visa guidelines that could see some immigrants denied entry to the United States if they have certain health conditions, including diabetes or obesity. The directive, which is being sent to U.S. embassies and consulates, tells visa officers to decide whether applicants could become a public charge, which means a potential burden on government resources due to health costs. Now, the list of conditions has expanded to include heart disease, respiratory problems, and mental health issues, giving officers more power to judge an applicant's future medical expenses. However, critics point out that the move is unfair, warning that it could lead to biased decisions. The administration, however, maintains that it wants to ensure immigrants are self-sufficient once they arrive in the United States of America. More news is coming in, this time from the Middle East. Stories of human suffering continue to emerge from Gaza. A Palestinian widow and her 3 children have now been displaced by months of fighting. They're among those who are forced to sleep in a bus luggage compartment, sharing the cramped space with 4 others. Meanwhile, some humanitarian aid is finally trickling in. The United Nations, meanwhile, has warned that the situation remains dire. Much of Gaza lies in ruins. Food, water and medicine are still scarce, and hundreds of thousands are facing the threat of hunger and disease. In fact, a UN spokesperson has stated that the ceasefire has allowed limited relief deliveries, but has emphasized that urgent, sustained humanitarian access is needed in order to prevent an even greater catastrophe. Listen in to what Esra Junaid, residing in a broken bus with her family in Gaza, has had to say.
طبعا انا هي مكاني، هي بنتي ريتاج الثانيه وهي ابن انس. طبعا الاولاد ملاقين هذه مرجحه لهم علشان فيش مجال انهم يلعبوا ولا يلاقوا لهم مكان انهم. انام تحت الشجره، في هذيك الشجره نمت لحالي انا واولادي. فترجت اصحاب الشأن في الماده في الكليه انهم يسكنوني، حكوا فيش عندنا مكان وسع. فجيراني حكوا لي تعال من قاعدك هنا في الباص، فيش مكان غير الباص. فالعيش في الباص لحالها مبينه انه صرت اصلي وانا قاعده، ما اخذش حريتي.
On that note, we're shifting focus away from the Middle East towards what's taking place in Djibouti. Djibouti's president Ismail Omar Guelleh has now stated that he will run for a 6th term in next year's election after Parliament has removed a constitutional barrier that had prevented him from running again. Remember, he's been in power since 1999. Now, he won the last election in 2021 with 97% of the vote, while his coalition, the Union for the Presidential Majority, holds the majority of the parliamentary seats. The move comes less than a week after the Parliament voted to remove the 75-year age limit for presidential candidates from the Constitution. More news coming in, this time from Tanzania. We're learning that Tanzania has moved to arrest senior opposition figures held responsible for deadly protests during last week's presidential and parliamentary elections. The main opposition party, Chadema, and human rights activists claim that security forces have killed over 1,000 people, while the government has denied these numbers, calling them exaggerated and not providing its own death toll. Now, the Tanzanian police have identified 10 wanted individuals in connection with the case, which is under investigation. Just a day after prosecutors charged 145 people with treason, the police have now stated that they're continuing a serious manhunt in collaboration with other defense and security agencies in order to locate all individuals who planned, coordinated, and carried out these actions. Shifting focus away from Tanzania towards what's happening in Kenya, we're now learning that 2 prominent Kenyan human rights activists, Bob Jagi and Nick Uyu, have been released after spending 39 days in detention in Uganda. They were abducted on the 1st of October during a political rally in support of Uganda's opposition leader and presidential candidate, Bobi Wine. Both activists are affiliated with the Free Kenya movement and were held at the Kassieni military barracks, allegedly under orders from Muhoozi Kainerugaba, son of Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni. Now, their detention has sparked outrage across East Africa, with civil society groups including Amnesty International and Vocal Africa calling for their immediate release. The Kenyan government also intervened diplomatically, leading to the activists' eventual release on Saturday.
The abduction was not easy. We didn't think we were going to come out alive because we were being abducted by the military. We have been kept by the military in Uganda for this, under the Special Forces Command. We're going to release more details to you in a short while after we get some medical attention. We've not been eating for about 14 days myself. I've been fasting. It's been very difficult, but thank you so much for
We're tracking other developments, this time from Brazil. We're learning that Brazil's Parnara state has released aerial footage of the destruction caused by a tornado that has killed 6 people. Damage across Rio Bonito do Icao, including destroyed buildings and farms nearby Guarapuava, was also affected. Authorities have stated that 437 people were treated for injuries and about 1,000 have been displaced. The Parnara Meteorology and Environmental Monitoring System has reported winds reach speeds between 180 and 250 kilometers per hour. News coming in from Turkey at the moment. A fire at a perfume depot in northwestern Turkey has killed over 6 people and injured 1. According to the Kocaeli governor, the blaze broke out at around 9 a.m. local time in the Dilovasi district of Kocaeli province and was brought under control within about an hour after emergency teams were dispatched. The governor also stated that the cause of the fire was not immediately known and authorities had launched an investigation. Let's in fact listen in to what the governor has informed.
9 sularında Dilovasi ilçemizde bir iş yerinde meydana gelen yangın sonucu maalesef 6 vatandaşımızı kaybettik. Bu olayda yine bir vatandaşımızın durumu yanık sebebiyle ağır olmakla birlikte 4.
Shifting focus away from Turkey towards what's happening in China. Chinese President Xi Jinping, during his visit to Guangdong, has emphasized upon deepening reform and opening up for high-quality development. He's highlighted Guangdong's role as a leader in reform and its responsibility in shaping the 15th five-year plan for the period of 2026 to 2030. Xi Jinping has called for strengthening the synergy between efficient markets and the government, fostering technological innovation and building a globally competitive industrial system. He has urged expanding institutional opening up, upgrading over free trade zones and enhancing integration in the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area. She has also emphasized cross-regional cooperation, advancing party leadership and strengthening anti-corruption efforts to ensure sustainable development. The Greater Bay Area, she noted, presents a unique opportunity for global competitiveness. More news coming in, this time from Germany. Germany's coalition government will re-examine trade policies with China, focusing on energy, raw material imports and investments in critical infrastructure. Now, a special committee of experts will report to the Parliament on security-relevant trade relations and make recommendations on this note. A motion submitted by Chancellor Friedrich Merz's Conservatives and Social Democratic partners is expected to be passed next Friday. The committee will include academics, industry groups, labor representatives and think tank members as well, reporting twice a year. Germany has long seen China as a trade ally, but Chinese restrictions on rare earth exports have prompted a rethink, especially for the car industry, which is rather robust in Germany. Chancellor Merz has called for protectionist measures to support European industries, with her finance minister Lingbell speaking of European patriotism. Germany is also set to approve more than $3.47 billion in defense equipment, including Airbus helicopters and night vision devices. News coming in from neighboring France. France's anti-terror unit has stated that 3 people were taken into custody as part of an investigation into a suspected terror threat linked to Salah Abdel-Sam, the only surviving perpetrator of the November 13, 2015 Paris attacks. Abdeslam, who was imprisoned in northern France for his role in the attacks that killed 130 people and wounded 100, was briefly questioned over the illicit possession of a USB memory stick in prison. He was again detained on Friday after authorities expanded the probe to include terrorist conspiracy aimed at preparing a crime against individuals. Now, amongst those in custody is Abdeslam's partner, Meva B., aged 27, who is suspected of receiving illicit items for the detainee and her involvement in criminal terrorist conspiracy. 2 other individuals were also taken into custody on similar charges. Authorities, meanwhile, have stated that the USB stick reportedly contained jihadist propaganda and had been used to transfer material to Abdeslam's computer, which he is allowed to use under strict monitoring conditions, including regular cell charges and searches of his belongings. Shifting focus away from Europe towards what's happening in Latin America, Peru's government has stated that it will not grant safe passage to former Prime Minister Betsy Chavez, who was granted asylum by Mexico, effectively blocking her departure from the country. Chavez faces conspiracy charges linked to former President Pedro Castillo's 2022 attempt to dissolve the Congress, with prosecutors now seeking a 25-year prison sentence, although Chavez denies these allegations. President Jose Eri has confirmed the decision, stating that Chavez cannot travel to Mexico. This announcement has come as Peru's diplomatic rift with Mexico is now deepening, which of course the latter granted asylum to Chavez, citing the 1954 Caracas Convention. More news coming in. A growing trend of water abstention has emerged amongst Generation Z, frustrated by what they perceive as a political system dominated by the same faces. Now, despite calls for reform and change, many young Iraqis feel disconnected from the election process, seeing little difference in leadership from past administrations. Now, the country continues to grapple with issues like corruption, economic instability, and weak governance, which have left many youth disillusioned. For Gen Z voters, the promises of political change ring hollow when familiar figures continue to hold power. Now, this increasing disengagement from elections could in fact signal a shift in Iraq's political landscape, where younger voters are now increasingly questioning the efficacy of the existing political system and whether their participation can truly lead to meaningful change. More news coming in, this time from Iran. The Iranian Energy Minister Abbas Ali-Abadi has stated that Iran is planning to cut water in Tehran on some nights when people are using less water in order to limit the consumption, as the country faces one of its worst droughts in decades. Rainfall in the capital has this year been at its lowest level in a century and a half of Iran's provinces, and several have not seen a drop of rainfall in months. Now, to save water, the Iranian government is planning water cuts in Tehran, and several local news outlets have already reported that pipes are running dry overnight in some areas. Listen in to what the Iranian energy minister had to say.
ممکنه که مجبور بشیم بعضی از شب‌ها که مردم عزیزمون در واقع آرامش هستن، تو اون شب‌ها که کمتر آب مصرف میکنن، در واقع فشار آب را تا حد صفر پایین بیاریم و این خب کمک میکنه به اینکه در واقع ما هدر رفت آب نداشته باشیم. اما ممکنه برای مردم عزیزمون زحمت ایجاد بکنه. من تقاضا میکنم که نسبت به نصب ذخیره.
Shifting focus away from Iran towards Italy. A top official of the Italian Banking Association has now stated that Italian banks have supported the European Central Bank's digital euro project, but want the costs of implementation to be staggered over time. ABI General Manager Marco Elio Rotocchini has stated that banks favor the digital euro as a step towards digital monetary sovereignty, but high capital expenditures required should be spread over several years. Now, the ECB aims to launch the digital euro in 2029, following a pilot phase in 2027, contingent on EU legislation expected in 2026 itself. Now, the project seeks to maintain central bank money's relevance in a digital economy, reduce reliance on non-European payment providers, and respond to the rise of stablecoins as well. Now, Rotigny has also supported a twin approach, combining a central bank digital currency with commercial bank digital currencies in order to ensure that Europe remains competitive and does not fall behind in digital payment technologies. More news coming in, this time from Spain. Spanish police have stated that they arrested a 64-year-old long-haul truck driver wanted by German authorities for drug trafficking. The man allegedly used his job to transport more than 250 kilograms of marijuana and hashish worth over 500,000 euros from Spain to Germany. He was arrested on Tuesday at a logistics hub in Santa Perpetua de la Mogoda near Barcelona. This is information according to the Catalan police. The driver is now in custody pending extradition under a European arrest warrant. Spain is, of course, a major entry point for marijuana and hashish into Europe due to its proximity to Morocco, which is a leading producer of these drugs. On that note, viewers, due to paucity of time, it's a wrap on the news.